Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Did the Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and today we are going to relive some childhood memories, or at least that's what this episode of The Simpsons is going to do. And, you know, someone who is always standing by me, your co-host with the most, Richie the Whiz Kid. How you doing today, Rich?
I don't remember agreeing to those terms. I'm okay, man. I'm not the biggest fan of this episode. I have some complaints about it for sure, and I think it's going to be one of those where it's the writing staff and producing staff are going to be like, oh, one of those Simpsons fans, but I feel like they definitely reset things that you thought you already knew a little bit in this episode. Plus, I feel like we've had some great animation in the season up to this point, and this episode just looked a little old and antiquated to me with the animation. So
interesting.
I don't know. We're gonna have plenty to talk about. I guess I should throw it back to you because it feels like it's gonna be one of those episodes. The man, the myth, he's redorculated. It is Miles.
Oh man, I'm not a makeout artist anymore. That was a fun moment. We're definitely, I think, going to agree on that particular scene. I'm going to say that I always watch these episodes like 3 times. I watch it normal, and then I watch it with commentary, and then I watch it again, just normal again right before we review. I think Richie just typically, I mean, he's obviously seen them before, but he watches it just once for the podcast. And I will say this. After my first viewing of this, just when I watched it yesterday, just no commentary, just watched it for the sake of watching it, I too felt that this one kind of missed the mark a little bit. But the more I watched the episode, like each time I watched it, I enjoyed it a little bit more. And I can't really speak to exactly why that is. And I literally just finished watching it right before we started this podcast. So perhaps throughout this conversation, I'll be able to, or together we'll be able to kind of pinpoint why that might be. But for the most part, right off the bat, I kind of agreed with you. Is just kind of, I can't say exactly why, but this episode did not connect with me in the same way that the previous episodes had been connecting with me, which is a little bit weird because of the episodes that we have reviewed so far this season, this episode and the Treehouse of Horror episode that we started with are both a 7.6 out of 10 on IMDb.
Wow.
And that is higher rated than all of the other episodes that we've rated so far this season.
I honestly don't. I don't understand that for this one. I really don't. And Miles, the effect that you are feeling where like you're slowly watching yourself into liking the episode, we call that the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 3 effect right there. Like
is it?
The initial viewing, you're like, no, I can't do this. And then you start slowly rewatching it and talking yourself into it being good the more you watch it.
I've seen Spider-Man 3 several times, and I also don't think that I've ever gotten to the, like, maybe I've said it's not as bad as I thought.
That's the point.
Not good.
Yeah. Which I might be.
I'll give you that one.
Day and age.
But honestly, just looking at it, like, so far we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the 5th episode of the season that we recorded so far. And I would have to say, if I were doing my ranking right now, I think this would be number 5.
Oh, this is
just of the 5 that we reviewed.
Yeah, this would be number 5, hands down. And like, I had issues with this one where I thought there was something wrong with my blood sugar because I went, man, this act break was really quick after the last one. And I just, the length on each act seemed really off, which when I was looking at the script a few minutes before we started, I went, oh, nope, that's just how it is. It's just, there's something that felt a little bit different about this one, which again, Simpsons episode, excuse me, there's still plenty of good moments in the episode. There's still moments that'll make you laugh, but the story felt a little off to me. I don't know. I guess that was the point with it being the Blunder years where it's supposed to be off a little bit, but it didn't feel like a Simpsons episode to me at times. I don't know how else to explain it, but that's what we're supposed to do here is explain it. So I guess we'll figure it out as we talk.
Well, I have a lot to say from the commentary, which we'll get to here in just a moment. I guess we should go ahead and start by saying that we are reviewing the episode The Blunder Years, which originally aired on December 9th in the year 2001. The Blunder Years is obviously a play or a parody of the show, very popular and one of my favorite shows when I was growing up, The Wonder Years. Really, really not connected in any other way other than maybe some narration and voiceover, though. It just fits the style, which is much more in the tune of like Stand By Me from Stephen King, which of course we'll talk more about. The chalkboard gag on this one, I must say, is one of my favorites. It's I am not Charlie Brown on acid. And the couch gag
Charlie
for this
Brown's
one.
you on acid.
The couch gag on this one, admittedly, I think one of the most dated, and so in the sense that when this came out in 2001, The Matrix was still relatively popular. The fourth one hadn't come out. That meme or that camera motion was still being heavily used and attributed to The Matrix, to the point that literally for the couch gag on this one, I just wrote Matrix. The Simpsons come in, they do that like pose in midair, the camera sweeps around them. You all saw The Matrix back in the 90s, or you're too young to know what I'm talking about. Either way, not the greatest of couch gags.
I feel like by the time they did this in the couch gag, I had already been at like people making fun of this ad nauseum status. If I remember correctly, when I first saw this episode, I feel like at that point it was like, let's do something different, please.
I think when Scary Movie parodied the Matrix scene, it was like in its prime and like really, really funny. And then just basically any time after that, it just kind of diminished returns.
And it was everywhere.
It was everywhere. So we are, you know what? Before we kick off the episode, I already teased this. So I'll go ahead and say the commentary for this episode. It did feature the showrunner at the time, Mike Scully, along with Al Jean, who at this time they were joking on the commentary that Al Jean was pretty much taking measurements on the drapes in Mike Scully's office, because that's about when they were transferring over to Al becoming the showrunner again for the second time. This commentary also featured Joel Cohen, Ian Maxtone Graham, Carolyn Omine, Matt Selman, John Frank, Don Payne, and Stephen Dean Moore. And while I usually say the more names I read at the top of the commentary track, the less valuable information there's going to be, there was a lot of banter and joking in this, and it was very fun commentary, but there was actually some nuggets of really interesting facts that I'm excited to share about this episode. Excuse me. We open up this episode with Marge having come home from the grocery store, and she's putting away the groceries. She's got, beer roll-ups for Homer. She does have fruit roll-ups for Bart as well. And the real star of this episode, Burley Paper Towels, who has a very handsome lumberjack-esque man on as their like spokesperson or logo or whatever you want to call it. And Marge is immediately already... It's 100% the brawny guy. Marge is already taken a little bit back by the handsomeness of this mascot, but she's also just very impressed with the towels and cannot stop showing off their absorbing power. I like that she's actually like using a blue liquid, which is of course like a parody of every paper towel commercial back in the day.
Well, possibly she's like, I have to tell somebody, and she picks up the phone and calls, and you don't know who she calls. You assume it's like Helen or somebody.
And we see Lisa running out of breath. I came home as quick as I could. What's going on?
Watch what happens when I spill this blue liquid.
And Lisa's like, you pulled me out of school for this?
Absolutely. You're about to get a lesson in value.
It is impressive because, like, literally Marge is using a corner of a paper towel and absorbing like a bunch of liquid to the point where she's like, and it's still not even done, Lisa. Just pour out some more milk. And Lisa's like kind of eye rolling at this point. But she does, and it works.
Oh, Burley, you're insatiable.
We see that later we cut to Marge in the kitchen again, and she's collected a lot of these paper towels. She's literally just got them stacked up as if they were about to shoot a Burley paper towel commercial in her home.
Mm-hmm. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And then she starts fantasizing that she actually sees, like, I almost said the brawny guy, the burly guy talking to her. You know, like she's done things like this before in the past. Who hasn't?
And Homer comes in like, well, this guy is like the epitome of manliness. Homer comes in and is not being the most brave man at the moment because he's like literally crying about a bee that buzzed past his ear. And then he gives like the motion of like, I need a hug. And Marge, to be fair, comforts Homer, but you can see her looking over the shoulder and she's still fantasizing about the burly man who in her mind comes to life.
Fantasize, Marge. Fantasize about Burley.
And we even get a few pelvic thrust out of it. Yeah. Hey, you're looking at that spokesjack. Well, I can fantasize too. And Homer starts looking around the room for inspiration. But when he sees a Mama Celeste pasta box, the mama in the picture comes alive and in a very Italian accent says, "You can't touch me, or if you were touching me, I'll cut you." Woo. And then he cuts over to a look of Robert Redford's dressing.
It's the Paul Newman dressing.
You're right, Paul Newman. Excuse me.
You've all seen those pictures on the bottles before.
Homer, I'll tell you what I told Redford. It ain't gonna happen. So here's a few things I need to say about this already from the commentary. We got some good stuff. Carolyn Amine is the one that came up with this idea, and it was inspired, the Brawny thing specifically, and it was inspired by the Brawny commercials in real life at the time. They did have a lumberjack spokesman that they've had for decades, but at this point in like the late 90s, early 2000s, they actually were running commercials where like women could call into the hotline and the Brawny man would like talk to them essentially. And it would just be like a burly dude saying like things that women want to hear, cliches pretty much like, I respect your time and can't wait to come home and clean for you, or like whatever they say.
That but definitely doesn't say anything about our society. That's literally about word for word what I was about to say, just as a joke. So I apologize to all the women out there. That was this was my both are going to.
This is the type of things that were said. I mean, that was where we were at as society in marketing, and that was a legit, probably $1 million campaign that paper towel company ran to sell more paper towels. And there's obviously targeting women, or to be fair, anybody who would be attracted to a burly man who is telling them like wholesome things about cleaning or whatever.
Yeah, any people that got scared off from women as a young child because, they're told their father was killed by them.
It was called The Perfect Boyfriend is like the name of the campaign that ran.
Really? But oh my gosh.
Even better, in my opinion, while that's funny in itself, even better, in my opinion, Paul Newman himself actually did the line read for that joke about Robert Redford. He was shooting a movie at the time. The Simpsons reached out to him and they got him on the phone. And when he told him the joke, he basically laughed and said that he would do it, but he could only do it over the phone because he was busy. So they agreed. They set it up. He did about 6 takes. And then he said, well, there ought to be something good in there. And he hung up.
Wow.
But to be fair, he's like a legend at this point already. He's busy working. He took the time to do the lines and get it to him, and they were all thrilled with the fact that they got him to make this joke about Robert Redford.
And honestly, it's one of those voice spots where like it's got that little twang of outlandishness to it where you feel like it was somebody like Hank Azaria just doing a voice almost. So that's really cool that it was actually him. Yeah,
it is kind of cool that they got the real guy to do it. It's always neat whenever somebody like a big like celebrity, just somebody that has a lot of fame that's willing to have some fun on The Simpsons.
I mean, this dude has his own dressing bottle for gosh darn sake.
Hey, and I believe if I remember correctly, all like the thing with Paul Newman is like all of the proceeds from all of his like food products go to some sort of charity.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah, it's like really his stuff is always really expensive, usually really good. But like if you are feeling like I want to help the world, but I don't really want to like do anything, I'll just buy some Paul Newman dressing and call it a day. So we see that Marge is actually so into this burly man mascot that she's writing a fan letter on a typewriter, mind you, in 2001. And it basically, I will give her credit that she at least acknowledges that she's like in the letter, I'm not sure if you're a real person or just like a conglomerate of like writers or whatever, but either way, I would really love a signed picture. And Marge, when she leaves, we see Homer in a very sneaky way. Like it's like comically funny. He's rolling in from behind the couch and he checks the typewriter ribbon where he sees that, she had just asked for this autograph picture. And his response is that like, oh, she hasn't asked me for an autograph picture in months.
And then he vows revenge.
Before rolling back over the couch and like sneaking away.
I did like that part.
That was good stuff. Yeah.
He could have just got up and walked away, but he assassins rolled back over the couch and he's good to go.
You can tell Marge is up to something. I'm sorry. You can tell Homer is up to something. And later when we see Marge again, the phone rings. And when she answers, we cut across the street to the Flanders home where Bart is pinching his nose to disguise his voice. We have a person-to-person call for Marge Simpson.
Person-to-person?
And Marge, I love that that's like every phone call is person-to-person, but Marge is very impressed by this. Homer takes the phone and disguises his voice. Hello, this is Chad Sexington, the model for Burley Towels.
How did you get my number?
And I love this line read by Dan so much because as Chad Sexington, he says a very Homer line. I don't know. But I was quite moved by your letter. I'd love to meet you and your family. Shall we say dinner?
Oh, my goodness.
Perfect. I'll be there at 7. Click.
Oh, my God.
And we cut, him and Bart are already celebrating, by the way.
Yeah, you could see it. It's actually this part has a good shot where it's in Flanders' house with Homer and Bart high-fiving, and you can see Marge like underneath where they're high-fiving outside in the Simpsons living room. All in one shot. So
and Marge is like from that perspective, you do see Marge getting very excited. Oh my God, dinner with Burley. But when we cut back to Bart and Homer, it pans out just a little bit, and you can see that Ned is actually sitting on the couch still of his own home.
Playing a prankaroo, eh?
I was having a private conversation with my wife in the guise of Chad Sexington. Do you mind? I love that he's literally standing in Ned's living room, but being just such an asshole to him.
Well, and Reverend Lovejoy and Helen are there, and I made a note that said, well, Helen's definitely not letting this go ever.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, it's surprising that the gossip doesn't get to Marge before the prank lands.
Right? Yeah. She's holding back.
And Homer's having a hard time holding back because as soon as he sees her, he's like immediately like, so how was your day? Did anything unbelievable happen? A phone call or thing of that nature?
You're not going to believe it. That paper towel lumberjack is coming here for dinner tonight.
Tonight? Well, you'd better get your hopes up. And that's such a mean prank. Yeah. At this point, it went from being a mean prank to being like over the line mean. Like the way he's trying to get her hopes up is like just, oh.
But Marge's, I will.
And she's not like Marge is so smitten with this brawny dude or burly dude that she's not catching on to Homer's very obvious like sneakiness or the
excitement over something that he didn't like 5 minutes ago. Yeah,
exactly. There's some signs here that I feel like a straight-minded Marge would probably have picked up on, but she's a little bit having like a crush brain or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So Marge has like tidied up the house. She's got burly paper towels everywhere. There's romantic candles lit. It's like all the way up. She's in her finest outfit. She is obviously excited. She even had a painting of Chad like made in his lumberjack outfit.
And I like when the doorbell rings when Bart rolls out a roll of his paper towels.
Instead of a red carpet, it's a white carpet. Yeah. Why, look, it's Chad Sexington. And Homer opens the door to reveal Barney standing in a lumberjack outfit.
Hey, baby, I'm that guy you like.
Barney? Where's Chad? And Homer and Bart laugh in the background as you can see the heartbreak on Marge. Congratulations, I feel ridiculous. And she's angry and sad and she leaves. And honestly, I love this next line by Barney too, to be real.
You mean I was just a prop in some cruel joke? Oh.
And I think this is funny because even though he obviously is, I do believe Barney is either drunk or stupid enough to like not realize that was the case when Homer's like, "Hey, can you show up in a lumberjack outfit for me and announce yourself as Chad?"
I have issues with Barney in this episode. I
Okay.
thought Barney was supposed to be sober now because we just saw him sober like an episode ago or 2 episodes ago. So I can't remember anymore if he's reverted at this point back to drunken Barney or not. So I've got an issue with that. I also have an issue with Barney that we'll talk about later on here in a little bit.
Okay, so honestly, I had completely forgotten about that. I now also don't know what is true or not.
Yep.
Interesting. Lisa is the one that suggests that Homer probably took things too far and that he should take Marge out for like dinner and a show.
But it was hard on me too. I had to wear a suit
to get dressed up for this fake prank that he did. He also suggests that he could take them. He's going to take her somewhere that's dinner and a show. What is it?
It was a hibachi place. I was all down.
That's right.
For that.
Yeah, it was hibachi. Yeah, it's dinner and a show. But Lisa encourages him to go a little fancier than that. So we see that they go to the Pimento Grove, and Marge is honestly, this is a very Marge moment in the sense that, like, on one hand, she has every right to be so mad and upset with Homer. On the other hand, based on this dialogue I'm about to say, you'll understand that it's not as bad as it could have been or usually is. I guess it was a pretty funny prank. I mean, I like the ones where nothing catches on fire.
Yeah, nothing is hurt except feelings. But, I mean, Marge was sexual fantasizing about this gentleman, okay? She was breaking her vow to Homer mentally.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Okay. I was trying to make it okay, but you know, it's hard.
Yeah, I think that every human on the planet, regardless of their relationship status, has been turned on by an advertisement at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I know I have.
Those office supply commercials. Woo!
See, I was thinking of the Kool-Aid Man.
Oh,
just the way he burst in the room. Oh, take me, Daddy.
Okay, we're definitely not going to go down the path of drinking liquids or anything like that.
Yeah, he can fruit punch all over me.
Sounds like the worst kind of sex move ever.
Yeah. Judith Owens, who I'm not sure if is that the real person. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not certain. I assume that she is, but she finishes her set on the piano before the MC introduces the headlining act, Mesmerino, the hypnotist. He's been on shows like the Michael Douglas Show and Art Linkletter's House Party.
Ugh. All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see. Who do we have here?
He spots Professor Frink in the audience, who looks like his normal self. And when he sees them, he kind of engages them like, "What's the matter with you, champ? You couldn't find a date?"
I didn't come here to be heckled and spoofed and whatnot.
And as he asks him, "Why did you come here?" he brings out his hypno coin and he dangles it in front of Frink's face. "Seriously, though, when I snap my fingers, my friend, you will be a makeout artist."
Glavin, that's too
He falls to the floor.
Hey, hold it, because it's different.
And when he rises up from under the table, he looks like a completely different, much more smooth and arguably handsome man.
"Hey, Cupcake, listen good. I want you to swallow that gum and meet me in the coat room in 5, 4, 3, 2, now."
And the waitress is into it. She literally swallows the gum she was chewing and says, "Whatever you say, Professor." The audience goes crazy wild. And back you go.
Oh, hey, no, don't make me. I don't want to go back to like that.
And he has
been redorculated.
The script calls him the Don Rickles of hypnotism here, and he turns his attention to Smithers, who is sitting with Burns. "Hey, smart move, Four Eyes. Sitting next to Skeletor here makes you look like Hercules."
Zing! What's a Skeletor?
That's Homer being both enthusiastically confused. No, I kid. But seriously, it's very nice to see a young man take his father out for a night of hypnotism before he dies.
Actually, my father died a long time ago.
Ooh, foreshadowing.
Oh.
And
I honestly didn't catch that line until just now.
Yeah. Honestly, the fact that he refers to Burns as his father in this, and then as the episode plays out, I think it's arguably very, very safe to say that Smithers legit has daddy issues.
Mm-hmm.
This episode honestly makes their dynamic way creepier in a lot of ways. I'm not kidding, dude.
I understand you're not kidding. It's forced daddyism.
Yeah, literally. Like it's and like I have a lot of questions about like the process. Was there an adoption in play? Like, is the mom still around? Like, it seems that dad, like at the end of the episode, dad dies and Burns is just like, well, we don't need to tell anybody about this. I'll just raise this kid in my office.
Well, no, he says it sounds like Burns gave him some horrible story about how his father died from the way they worded at the end. But I'm going to assume that his dad worked all the time. So mom either died at childbirth or got mad at Wayland Sr. for working all the time and left them. And Smithers just doesn't even remember what she's like.
That's fair. We'll talk more about it as we go through this episode because we're definitely got a lot more to say about Smithers and Burns towards the end. For now, though, Mesmerino just needs anyone who can volunteer who also isn't a downer. And of course,
me.
That brings him to Homer, who, when he does his little hypno coin, immediately Homer is with it.
I am in your power. Boss me around.
When I snap my fingers, you will transform into a famous historian.
Look at me. I'm a famous historian. Out of my way.
Thank you. Now you are Emily Dickinson.
Look at me. I'm Angie Dickinson.
I love that, like, Homer is very clearly on board with his hypnotism, but he doesn't actually know the people he's being turned into, specifically Angie Dickinson instead of Emily Dickinson. And when he's a famous historian, that's like, oh, yeah, I'm one of those.
Yeah.
But when he tells Homer his next feat is when he snaps, he's going to be a 12-year-old boy again. And as soon as he does, he's reliving his childhood memories, spending his day with his friends at his old swimming hole, before suddenly he starts screaming uncontrollably. And I will say, this is hilarious because Homer, this is Dan Castellaneta, just over the top. I mean, an 11, off the charts, screaming like a madman. And when you think it's going to end, it doesn't, because it just keeps going. Mesmerino doesn't know how to bring him out of it. We see him just scramble back into like the pyramid that was on stage that he came out of. And as Homer leaves the nightclub, he screams. As he tips the valet, he screams. As he drives home, he screams. As he brushes his teeth, he screams. Even as he lays in bed at night next to Marge, he screams and screams and screams. And on the commentary, they did say that this was just like the most table read breaking moment that they had at the time, because everybody was laughing so hard that it took them several minutes to like get themselves together and like continue on with the show.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I was terrified I was waking up my whole house when I was watching this episode at 4 a.m. So I was like, oh my God, Homer, stop.
Calm down, dude. Calm down. That does bring us to the end of our first act, which is actually pretty long on standards of the ones that we've been watching recently. It's been an 8-minute act. Before we move on, I do want to say that in the commentary, they talked about how Mike Reese, who we've had on the show a couple times now, actually went to a hypnosis show and got picked. And he claimed that as soon as he went up on stage, the hypnotist leaned into his ear and just said, "Do what I say. Just do what I say." And Al then chimed in with one of the best burns I've heard on the commentary. Al popped in and is just like, "Oh, he must have said you will be super cheap the rest of your life." Keep in mind, they're like best friends and writing partners, so that makes that joke even better.
I'm just glad I know all the secrets to hypnotism now.
For his next opening up the second act, I should say, Mesmerino. Wait, I totally just messed that up. Let me back up. As we open up our second act, Marge is actually showing us the secret to Bart's wardrobe as she's ironing a pair of blue shorts and a red shirts, and then she puts them into a pile and shuffles them as if they were cards, saying like, well, there's Bart's clothes for the week.
And then outside you start hearing little faint screaming sounds with Lenny and Carl pushing Homer home, and like the only thing I can describe, it's one of those like strap down.
It's like what they carried Hannibal Lecter in.
I was going to say Cletus Cassidy in Spider-Man, but yes, that's the same thing.
Same thing. I like Bart's response. Oh, cool. He's still mental.
Yeah, my hunch is he's struggling with some sort of repressed memory.
How do we unrepress it?
Well, the Yaqui Indians brew a special tea that unlocks memories.
And Marge is trying. This is Lisa, of course, the smartest Simpson, but Marge is like, ooh, it would be a good excuse to use my Yaqui tea set.
Looks very pleasant, too.
As they drink the tea, they ask Homer if anything's coming back.
Like he takes one sip and she's like, well, is anything coming back to you? Give it time, Marge. I hope.
Yeah, it is like there usually is a period in which it takes time to react, but
not in movies and television though.
We don't have time for that, dude. We got 22 minutes to get through this episode.
Like in Paul Blart, either the first or second one, where he's diabetic and he has a low blood sugar and he can't focus and he eats one little Jolly Rancher or whatever it is, and he's like instantly jumps back up, and I'm like, motherfucker, you're crashing into everything for like 10 more minutes.
Homer does have his memory jog, though, and he even says, there's been so many classic Simpsons moments. I remember the time I tried to jump over the Springfield Gorge. And we actually cut to a clip from the episode Bart the Daredevil, where Homer's midair saying, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it.
Oh, Dad, everyone's sick of that memory.
And the commentary had some insight on this as well. That Lisa joke was actually added a little bit late because the writing staff was legitimately worried that people would assume this was turning into a clip show. Yeah. And they would just change the channel. So they had Lisa cut in to make sure that everybody knew that that was just a joke and that wasn't going to dissolve into just past clips from the show.
Honestly, like nowadays, watching the episode, I think it would be funnier without Lisa's line in it, but I feel like watching it initially, that would absolutely happen with a lot of people if they didn't have the line in there. So I think it's definitely justified.
Well, this is coming from the era of like channel surfing versus streaming. Yeah. Like you don't pick the episode you don't watch and commit to watching it. A lot of times you're flipping around trying to see what the most interesting thing to watch at the time is. Mm-hmm. And theoretically, if you're like clip show, I guess I'd rather watch whatever's on FX or whatever.
But it's a funny bit. I definitely get their worrisomeness of this gag.
But instead, we cut all the way back to when Homer was 12 years old, and him and Lenny and Carl were all teenagers or young kids, really. That were
problem.
They were. That's right now. Do you want to talk about it now, or do you want to get in the scene a little first?
I mean, Lenny and Carl were friends with Homer when they were kids.
According to this episode, they were.
I thought he met him at the power plant when he first got his job there, when they had degrees and he didn't.
That sure does sound familiar.
Okay. Did they talk about that in the commentary and tell us to shut up?
Not at all. Wow. They did say that they were warned that they should not set this show in the past, because if the show goes on for like even 10 years, people will complain that it doesn't make sense. So they're just like, that's not going to happen. That was pretty much the only thing they had to say about that.
Second problem. I thought Homer and Barney were like lifelong friends. So how do you have an episode about Homer being a kid with his friends and Barney makes absolutely no appearance? And I have a theory on why they didn't do that, because Barney would be just as idiotic, if not more idiotic than Homer. So
he would belly flop on top of Homer in the empty quarry.
Or do it first, basically, and then it would be a story about Barney finding the dead body.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, did I spoil it? But yeah, it's the continuity stuff.
I think everybody's stand by me at this point. It's okay.
Yeah. I think the continuity issues that they always bitch about not caring that people say definitely start happening in this episode.
Yeah. Anytime they do anything where they go to the past, like I know, for instance, an episode that I really like that it pisses people off greatly is like when Homer starts the grunge band Sadgasm, and it like rewrites the history. And I understand why a lot of people get really annoyed at that, but to be completely honest, it's never really bothered me. Like I don't really get annoyed with The Simpsons specifically, like when they take advantage of their flexible reality.
Yeah, but you can bring us back on that, Miles. But here's the thing. We are a Simpsons review podcast. So if I'm going to review this episode the way I do all others, then I'm going to say, hey, we know that this doesn't make sense.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm not trying to deny you the right to acknowledge.
No. This is a breakup.
And even if you disagree and it really does bother you, I understand that. Like, I understand why there are people that it annoys them, but I don't know. Like, this isn't the type of show that would bother me on. That would bother me if I were watching like, I don't know, like a more serious show, like something
one where the story goes forward each episode.
Yeah.
That would make it more troublesome, but no, it's a fucking cartoon show. Just calm down, people.
Like I'm blanking on what the name of it was. What was the show that they did that was a prequel to Psycho? It was Norman Bates when he was a child. Bates Motel. Thank you. I love that show early on, especially, but there definitely got towards the end seasons. It got to be places where it's just like, wait a second, that doesn't really connect. Like that wouldn't make a lot of sense. And I don't specifically remember what those things were because it's been years since I've watched that show. But I think that would be an example of something that like goes to the past and I have more invested in if they actually make it make sense versus The Simpsons. I'm like, whatever, dude. Like Homer can go like have an episode where he plays with dinosaurs for all I care.
Oh, wait. You have that episode.
Yeah.
He comes back and everyone's got long tongues.
In this case, though, we are going to see that in the timeline that currently exists, call it a Mandela if you want to, or whatever, we have Homer, Lenny, and Carl all hanging around singing 50s pop songs. And they run into a youthful trio of Fat Tony and his goons who are they like trying to sell cigarettes? I don't remember what they're doing here.
It was wacky yeah, they're asking if he's got a batch of wacky tobacco.
Oh, weed, right on. Yeah. They assemble Tony's patch of weed that they're growing weed. There you go. And the Fat Tony and his gang are about to beat these three up, it would seem. But then out of nowhere, a very young, a very skinny, and a very armed with a BB gun, Mo Sizlak comes up and shoots them. They're immediately like, oh God, he's got a daisy.
We better scram. 18 more pumps. That could break the skin.
He has like the old pump style BB gun, which I did accidentally shoot one of my friends with once, which was hilarious, but it did not break the skin.
Miles and accidentally shooting somebody with something that he knows won't really hurt.
No, it was actually a really beautiful moment in gun safety, and luckily it was just a BB gun, and I was just a drunk idiot that I literally was like, "Don't worry, dude, it's not loaded."
But I assume you knew it was loaded.
Daisy B. I did not know. I legitimately thought it was empty. No,
it just sounds like normal Miles being Miles. Like, hey, it's not loaded, but bam.
No, I did do that with a fly trap for a long time. I have an electronic fly swatter, and it's one of my favorite things to do is to show it off and be like, I don't know how it works, but like doesn't electrocute people unless you're like a fly, and I'll be touching it when I do that, and there's like a little hidden switch that activates it. I think I've gotten you with this prank.
I don't remember this at all.
It just shocks you when you touch it, and it's not like a bad shock. It's enough shock to kill a mosquito or a fly.
I picture the BB gun making one of those like "Don't Get High" commercials. Where you're like, "Don't worry, it's not loaded."
As I'm like melting into the couch. Yeah.
Ow, my skin almost broke.
But this is how Mo saved the day and apparently became friends with Homer, Lenny, and Carl. And we see that they immediately become good friends. They're camping out next to the campfire, hanging out, just doing that 50s montage that happens in almost every Stephen King movie when a group of kids are together. Well, not that thing that happens in Stephen King's books, though. Like not the thing the kids do in books, just the kids the kids do in the movies. Way different vibe.
Whoa. Hey, and then they're all sitting around a campfire, just having a grand old time, talking about the future. Hey, you know what I'm looking forward to? The future. Have you heard about this internet thing?
Internet?
Yeah, it's the interneting they invented to line swim trunks. Provides a comforting snugness.
Oh man, I like that joke a lot because it would make no sense. I mean, the internet has been around for longer than most people realize, but it would not have been something that kids would have known about in the 50s for sure. This is also the first time that they noticed the nuclear power plant that just opened.
Hey, yeah, that's your future, pushing or busting atoms. Can you imagine us working there, the whole Carl crew?
Hey, I thought we were called Lenny and the Jets.
You're both wrong. We're the most Sizzlack experience featuring Homer.
I like the sound of that.
Friends forever?
Friends
forever.
They all join hands and right over they put their hands in, but they're all sitting around a fire, so they burn themselves. And they're like, oh man, we're so stupid.
Hate you guys.
The next day, we see that they're standing on the edge of a quarry where there's a long drop to the water. Mo can't believe, like, wow, you're really going to dive off of here?
Not me. I'm shaking like a French soldier.
Fun fact from IMDb. In the French version of the show, they actually say on this line, I'm shaking like a leaf. I wonder why they changed it. Yeah, French I think I just logged into my internet. Another great joke. Lenny literally says only a moron would jump into this lake, which is Homer's cue to come running in from off screen, pushing Lenny and Carl out of the way as he takes a flying leap into a belly flop, straight down until we hear a thump, and he lands in a very rough looking way with only a minor bit of mud at the bottom of this quarry and almost no water.
And Homer starts to let out a very low level scream. Nothing like he was doing earlier.
Nothing compared. But Mo is convinced that he solved the problem. And there's your whatchamacallit, your repressed trauma. I mean, who likes getting muddy? It's terrible, you know? All right, let's all go to Mo's now.
Wait a minute. I remember falling in the mud, but I don't think that's why I've been screaming.
Fine, crap all over my theory.
Something else happened in that quarry.
We drift back to the past where we see Homer is still face first in the mud, looking around, wondering what could have happened. He looks up into a big pipe and discovers something is clogging it. So he grabs a stick and pokes at it before a bunch of nastiness comes out. And amongst that nastiness is a decomposing corpse.
Well, and his friends up top, while he's poking at it, they walk away. So they don't see this part, which was very clever that they actually had the others walk out of the scene so they wouldn't remember this part.
And they wouldn't have any knowledge of what happened, yeah.
Yeah, Mo's like, hey, let's go to Sears to feel the bras. And then they all turn around and leave.
So when Homer has this trauma alone, and it's a pretty gnarly looking corpse, to be honest. It does look like something that would come out of a Treehouse of Horror episode. And they did talk about this on the commentary as well, because apparently the corpse went through quite a few redesigns and actually got toned down quite a bit. And it's mostly because they realized that they can get away with a lot of gross out stuff on their Treehouse of Horror episodes. But when they put this into a normal episode, so to speak, it often gets a lot more complaints and just people being like, I don't let my kids watch your Halloween episodes because I know what that's getting into, but I do let them watch the show regularly. So they do kind of keep that in mind and did end up toning it down quite a bit from what they had it at.
Man, go watch the South Park movie or something.
I respect that. Honestly, I get you're trying to find that line of what's still funny and kind of gross and traumatizing in this case, but not legitimately going to traumatize your kids.
But the maggots crawling around in the skull definitely won't.
It's a pretty intense skull. The bugs and stuff in it are pretty gnarly.
Mm-hmm.
Homer begins screaming just as he did before, not like he was when he hit, not like it was earlier when he fell into the mud, like Moe's theory, but this is the same scream that he did when he was hypnotized, and it's intense and it's loud, and it is the way that we end our second act. This one just shy of the 13-minute mark, so it's actually our second act that is the odd one out in that it's less than 5 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
When we do kick back to our third act, we are once again in the Simpsons living room, only this time it was with or in the present day, which it was last time. I don't know why I said it like that. It is what it is. You found a corpse when you were 12? No wonder you've been so traumatized. And she goes over to hug her husband.
It's responsible for everything wrong in my life. My occasional overeating, my fear of corpses. And this is where I start having problems with the animation, or at least the streaming service I was using to watch it at this point. The animation just looks sloppy from this point on in the episode to me. And it took me out of it. Like it really did. So maybe that's why it got lower a lot quicker in my realm. But I do feel like the wrap up too towards the end of this act is just kind of convenient and quick. Just like some of the ones that we've complained about in the past, sort of.
I can 100% understand why you'd have that complaint. I did not notice the animation personally take a shift in this. I do feel like the animation wasn't up to in general, but I didn't notice that there was like a moment in the episode where it shifted. But you obviously were paying closer attention in that, Ray.
We had such a beautiful ending on the last episode where everything looked so fantastic.
That's very true. That sunset ending was amazing.
Yeah, and it just made this more noticeable because I had my expectations higher for it, I guess.
Fair, completely fair. In this case, though, what everyone's going to say, or specifically Mo, what I want to know is what the heck was that body doing there?
Maybe there's a murder afoot.
A murder most foul.
Maybe.
If Dad never told anyone, that body must still be out there. That's a leap.
That's another part I had an issue with there. It sounds like a case that only the Simpsons family can solve.
And I do like this because it actually like hurts Mo's feelings in a funny way. Oh, okay. I'll just be going then. And Mo, Lenny, and Carl all head for the door.
Hey, you guys can come with us.
No. You said Simpsons family. I mean, it sounded exciting, but we don't want to intrude.
Thanks for understanding.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I'll see you. He walks away so depressed, dude. Like, there's a juxtaposition, and like Mo is very obviously hurt and sad that he doesn't get to go and be a part of this adventure, and Homer doesn't catch it at all.
Bye, Mo. And this, like, we've definitely hit in the last like half a season full swing on Mo, where we've definitely had like the angry, possibly on the verge of killing himself Mo, and now we have like the very sad, depressed, possibly killing himself Mo. Like we talked that there would be a point where like the change happens, and it's basically on full display by now, I feel like.
Yeah, I would agree. He's crying out that he needs a friend or some companionship or something.
They invited him.
Yeah,
he wanted to be pursued. I almost said Marge. He wanted to be pursued, Miles.
There's feeling like you would be allowed to come along, and there's feeling like you're wanted to be coming along.
Mm-hmm. And the part that sucked is right before Homer was like, "Bye, Mo." He's outside and looks back into the family living room, and they're all smiling, just waving at him like, "Bye." Like, oh, right. You wanted them back at the bar. You got Lenny and Carl. Go take them to the bar, get them drunk.
Yeah, honestly, you've served your purpose here, Mo. Like, you can go and get your bar business going.
Oh,
just don't go in the basement. It's dark down there. For whatever reason, the Simpsons wait till night to go back to the quarry. And Homer is just like, "Yep, the old quarry, just a stone's throw away."
Stop saying that, Dad.
Never. And it's funny because that means that literally they've just been living a stone's throw away from where Homer knows this dead body is, and they've never talked about it.
It was a repressed memory, Miles. It wasn't unlocked until the act, so he had forgotten about it.
That's true. We see them driving by, and they actually drive by Mesmero his house where he's picking up his mail. And we get a little call to the amazing Karnak, where Johnny Carson used to do a bit where he'd hold a envelope up to his forehead. Then he'd say a question, and the answer would be in the envelope, which was always funny. In this case, it's like Mesmero is like, "How much is left in my banking account?" And he opens, it's his bank statement, $17.76.
I thought it was 1776, and then he goes, "The amount left in my bank account."
Yeah, I fucked up the bit. You're 100% right. It's the answer comes first, and then the question.
With apologies to Johnny Carson.
Yeah, there you go. They shine the light. Homer shines the flashlight down in the water, pointing out that this is it, the old quarry.
Maybe we should come back in the daytime.
Yeah, maybe that's a great idea. My mistake for bringing us all out here is what Homer should have said. Instead, someone's yellow belly is showing, which is extra funny because Bart is actually his T-shirt is like written up, exposing his actual yellow belly.
Oh, sorry. And he pulls it down.
We see a rustling in the bushes, which at first startles the Simpson, but it just turns out to be Chief Wiggum, who points out that he's something of a crime buff and asks if he can tag along. After they explain to him that they're looking for a dead body or investigating a possible murder.
It's a good way to pull in the cops on this one.
Sure. At the edge of the swimming hole, Wiggum tries using a grappling hook. They're hooking around, but all he ends up getting is a shopping cart, which freaks Homer out again. They're looking around, but it doesn't seem like they're going to find anything until Marge has the idea to come back with 8 rolls of burly paper towels, which absorbs all of the water in the lake.
I like that they brought it back because usually after the opening act, they get rid of all that stuff.
I agree. I like that there was a callback here. That was smart. And unfortunately, Lisa thinks she's onto something, but Wiggum is like, well, don't get excited. It's just a skull-shaped rock and a bunch of white sticks.
It's the body.
And someone's eating the flesh off of it.
But then he looks
which is technically
angrily
close to accurate. It's just bacteria has done that.
But when Homer says that, he looks at his family like, which one of you did it?
Yeah. So now they're getting closer to solving the mystery. They look inside the pipe where this all came from and kind of go looking inside to see where it comes from. And there's a line here that Homer's to Lisa, like, now do you believe dead rats float, Lisa?
Yes.
Apparently in the syndicated version of this show, the rat that you can actually see in the water was cut out, so you don't really get the visual reference to that joke.
I'm trying to remember if I've seen this episode a few times, and it might be a Mandela effect, but I think I might have seen a version where you don't see the rat.
Yeah, honestly, I'm pretty sure there was, but now you say that, I'm like, I don't really 100% remember, but I feel like there was.
I just remember the feeling of, oh man, what are they looking at? Even though, they're talking about it.
Sure. It's the dialogue works regardless, but there is a if you didn't see it, there is a visual of the rat in the original version.
Yeah. And
when the group
gets back in a second,
when the group gets to the end of the pipe, though, there's a hatch overhead, and Wiggum points out that the murderer could be on the other side. So Wiggum cocks his pistol as Homer opens the hatch. Wiggum peeks through, and when he sees a shadowy figure with a knife, he just takes a shot, which misses but ricochets into the light switch. And when the lights come on, it reveals that Monty Burns is there holding a letter opener, and he's understandably a little startled by the people coming through his floor.
And I want to point out that when they open that hatch, there is a rat on Bart's shoulder. So the rat was not dead, therefore...
Or at least that one wasn't.
I'm pretty sure it's called back to that joke instantaneously.
Sure.
What are you doing in my corpse hatch?
Montgomery Burns, you're under arrest for murder.
Did I say corpse hatch? I meant innocence tube.
Good save, sir. They are not falling for this Burns' innocent act, though. He produces, he basically is like Burns says he can explain it all. And he goes on, Wiggum's like, all right, quit stalling, Burns. Who'd you ice?
I'm afraid that skull belongs to my dear friend, Waylon Smithers.
And of course, at first you're like, what? But he explains it's his father. Mr. Smithers' father?
They had to throw that line in there just in case.
Yeah. And Burns insisted he was not a murderer and that he has a film to prove it. He even says, if you're only going to watch one film this year, make it this one. It's an old...
Has that.
Go ahead.
He just happens to have that film in a safe where it's conveniently located storytelling wise.
He's just kept it this entire time for no reason. It's literally like an old film reel too that he has to get an old school projector out for.
Yep.
We see a hair, a Mr. Burns that has a head full of hair, I should say. But he's still in the same mindset that he is currently.
Why are these numbers so high? Why is that red light flashing? What's that alarming sound? Smithers, get in here. Smithers.
And a man that looks similar to the Smithers that we know comes running in holding a baby. Sorry, Monty, I was feeding Waylon Jr.
Will you put that baby down? There's something wrong with the reactor core.
We look inside and see there's like green electricity bolts zigzagging everywhere. It kind of looks like how the Hulk happened with the gamma ray radiation. Waylon decides he better go in and have a look.
No, Waylon Sr. I can be filled with atoms. Or that can be filled with atoms and stinging with other nuclear bric-a-brac.
And Burns is only worried for himself, even though he's not even the one that would be going in. But Waylon Sr. keeps on pursuing. If this reactor blows, this whole town is doomed, including my son. He goes in the door. He closes it behind him.
It's very Spock saving Kirk in the whole Enterprise feel right here to me. Had to throw a Star Trek reference in for the fellas. So, you're a baby, huh? How's that working out for you?
We get the old... He's trying to like make small talk so that they don't have to sit there awkwardly silent, I guess. And then we get an all clear chime.
He did it! And then he holds Waylon Jr. up to the viewing glass so that he can see what's going on in there. Look at your heroic daddy in there, making funny faces, falling to the floor, shedding his hair, lying perfectly still.
And that's when he's like, oh, and he pulls Junior out so he can't see what's going on.
And then the worst part.
This is actually, it's Smithers says his very first word, which ends up being sir, as he grabs Burns' nose. And of course, we know that is the most common thing that Smithers says to Burns his entire life. Again, adding to a whole level of creepiness to that obvious crush that Smithers has on Burns.
Smithers Sr. gave his life to save the plant. And since cover-ups were all the rage back then, I shoved his heroic corpse down the sewer pipe. I never told Smithers the truth about his father.
It was so much easier back before the internet, and I don't mean short webbing. But Smithers is actually in the room until tonight, sir.
Smithers Jr.
Busted. And then Homer makes the acknowledgement that, wow, this movie's turned into a play, but it's still good, though.
I love when this all started, too. Homer's like, ooh, movie, and ran and dove on the couch.
He got popcorn.
Yeah. I'm sorry I lied to you, Waylon, but I wanted to spare you the details of your father's gruesome death.
Well, I'm glad to know he died a hero instead of that other way. What has he been told?
I told him his father was killed in the Amazon by a tribe of savage women. I hope it didn't affect you in any way.
That's a good joke. We'll never know, sir. We cut back to the Simpsons family relaxing at home, where Homer is putting the skull that they found in the quarry in a box marked memories. Well, Marge, we solved the case of the haunted quarry.
Homer, shouldn't we give that skull to Mr. Smithers?
Why? He'd just bury it.
And you think it's all over, but it ain't.
Think it's all over. But Mo Sizlak returns holding an envelope.
Hey, I found a clue that's going to bust your mystery wide open.
Sorry, Mo, we already solved it.
Well, you want to take a look anyway, just for ha's?
Seems kind of pointless now.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It's just that I went through a lot of trouble, making the envelope and everything.
Well, let's see what you have, Mo. They all sit on the couch together.
And I have animation problems with this too. Now, this first thing is just going to look like a used Band-Aid, and it is, but the rest of the stuff don't make no sense without it. So, bear with me.
Wow, Mo, you've been doing a lot of sleuthing.
Oh, yeah. I sleuthed my ass off on this one. Okay. This is a number 6 from somebody's address, or it's a 9. You don't know.
And at this point, the scene fades to black and we start to get the credits playing. But instead of the theme song, we continue to hear Mo's conspiracy theories.
This is gravel. Okay? Gravel. This is, that's more gravel. Okay, this is a shell that to me, this is just me talking. It looks like a helmet for a mouse. That sounds crazy, right? If you ask me, the mice about it, they don't say nothing. I mean, they run the other way. At first, I was just fishing with the helmet thing, but then the mouse's reaction, I got more concerned.
Did you really make this envelope? Because it says hammer mill over here.
No.
And that's when we get the Gracie like shh and the Gracie logo, but instead at the very end of the episode, we get one more final Homer screaming, possibly louder than ever. That brings us to the end of our third act and to the end of the episode of the Blunder years. Richie, is there anything else that you or that book? I know you have more to say about the animation and other stuff. So let's air your grievances, my friend.
Well, even in that last scene there, Moe comes in on the couch with Marge and Homer, and there's a coffee table in front of him. And it looks like he's going to be laying all the stuff on the coffee table, and then the shot cuts into all three of them for a second, and when it pans back out, the table's just magically gone all of a sudden. So I just, and it was like almost not the last straw, but it was like, okay, this is par for the episode at this point. When I saw that moment, and I just said, I feel like that the season so far has been very bright and very, like, it's just been a lot better than we were expecting it to be. And I feel like this episode kind of brought it back down to where you're starting to go, okay, is this the route that we're on now? So like, I really was upset with the way this episode went about. I mean, it still got a lot of great moments. We talked about it, but like the other part too, the Simpsons are with Burns watching this movie. Who the hell's watching Maggie? She's not there at all. Like, what's going on here? So you can say a wizard did it if you want, but like, that's not good enough for me this time, Miles. I just feel like it might have been rushed or it might have been a little sloppy this time, and that's going to happen from time to time. But I just want to point out that it's all there.
No, I mean, you make some good observations, and again, I give a lot of lenience to the show. I can definitely see there's a lot of plot holes, we'll call them, for that you're blowing wide open on this podcast right now. I will say this once again, according to the commentary, and this is actually mostly Carolyn Omine talking at this point, just about how Hank Azaria said up for a long time, possibly still now, but she pointed out that, you know, this was for years after this episode aired. Hank Azaria said that this was one of his favorite episodes, and it was largely because he got to improvise that entire ending sequence. That was no script, just him going off and just being a crazy conspiracy theorist, which I can understand why that would make it his personal favorite episode, even though there's still major conflict and possible, you know, issues that you've clearly pointed out. I will also say, there was an alternate ending, and I think I personally would have rather have seen this because it would have put a great little bow on the whole episode in my mind. There was an alternate ending written where when we're back at the Simpsons home, Chad Sexington, the actual Chad Sexington, shows up to take Marge on a date. And that's how the episode would have ended. I personally think that sounds like a way funnier idea.
That would have been pretty hilarious.
Indeed. But as highly rated as this episode is, I think we're calling it problematic, if you will.
I think we need to go to the root of the issue here and go talk to IMDb, because what the hell happened?
What are you doing with your rating system?
Yeah.
I do actually, just as I click on it, the very first review has it as like a 3 out of 10. And like I'm not going to click on it and go further, but like their first line was like, I hated this episode when I first watched it, but the more I watch it, the more I like it. So maybe there is something to that. I don't know. Maybe this is one that if you have to watch it enough to get over the stuff you hate about it so that you can enjoy it.
I've never nitpicked this episode, though, and I've seen this episode probably about 4 or 5 times.
Fair, yeah. I don't know, man.
You know,
I don't know.
Years in between each viewing.
Yeah, so this is one. I'll say this: I have almost no memory of this episode. Like, I'm confident watched it because I watched the DVD set whenever I bought it. But like, this one is not one that I remember watching previously.
Well, we're in that time zone, man. It's going to start happening more and more.
We are in that time zone. And honestly, I'm just looking at the next one. I'm sure that it's a Richard Gere episode. I've definitely seen this one. We'll get to that here probably next week if we don't finally get around to a best darn everything at some point. But in the meantime, thank you everybody who's listened to this podcast, download it, told a friend, supports us on Patreon/best darn diddly, DIDDLY, since I just said it weird. But yeah, we really do appreciate all of you who support us and who support this show.
Yes, and thank you for listening to me complain. I know it's been happening more frequently of late, but we did
have
not
going to stop anytime soon.
We did have like 4 really good episodes between the last complaining episode, so I feel like we're on a good roll right here. If 1 out of 5 episodes have a little bit more complaints, that's still a great track record for this show. Make sure you follow Miles at Mr. Most Days Off. Make sure you follow myself at TheWiz_Kid23. Make sure you follow our show at Best Darn Diddly. That is DIDDLY.
And Richie and I are looking ahead at our calendar. Our next episode that we will be reviewing is She of Little Faith, a Christmas episode and the last episode of 2001. So it won't be long before we're within 20 years of the current Simpsons.
And yeah, nothing will be hurt on the next one except feelings.
Until next time, be cromulent to each other.